It's a treat and an honor to toast Ed on his 90th birthday. And I'm glad I have a chance to speak on behalf of the humble bagel, the simple yet noble pinnacle of Jewish cuisine. Bagels, of course, go all the way back in Jewish history. In fact, all the way back to the beginning. As recorded in Genesis, on the seventh day, while God was finally taking a break from creating the world, he said, I could use a nosh, and created the bagel. And it was very good. And of course, a little while later, when Adam and Eve eat the forbidden fruit from the tree of knowledge, forbidden because God didn't want to share, Eve, suddenly sentient, turns to Adam and says, say, this could use a schmear. So God immediately knew something was up. Fast forward 1,000 years, and we come to Abraham, the first Jew. God speaks to Abraham and tells him to leave the land of his ancestors and go to a strange land where he and his descendants will make a killing in the delicatessen business. And despite his wife Sarah saying, what are you, crazy? In a recession? Off they all go. And then we come to the tragic story where Abraham hears God telling him to sacrifice his beloved only son Isaac on Mount Moriah. And then, at the last moment, when Abraham's knife is fully poised in the air, the holy voice comes down again and says, I didn't say I said dim sum, not son, you idiot. Beginning the millennia-old connection of Jews with Chinese food. But back to the story. Stuck in the thicket, back to the story. So a traumatized Isaac turns and says, look, Father, it's a miracle. Stuck in the thicket, it's a bagel. And it's filled with cream cheese. And so the Bible records what's known as the miracle of the bagel. But scholars tell us that the redactors of the Bible later changed the bagel to a ram because everybody would think that the bagel was just too good to be true. A few hundred years later, we come to one of the foundational events in Jewish history, the night of the Exodus from Egypt, commemorated each year at our Passover Seders. As the Haggadah relates it, after finally hearing the anguished cries of the enslaved Israelites, God rains down 10 plagues on the Egyptians. And on the final night, the night of the final plague, God orders Moses to tell the Israelites to gather all their possessions and leave in great haste. No time for baking bread, says the Eternal. 18 minutes in the oven, and that's it. And then we hear Moses' heartbreaking, poignant plea to God. If only we can have a few more minutes, we can make bagels. Well, we all know God's tough love reaction to that. But incidentally, this lesser known part of the story was expunged from the Torah and instead inserted by the sages at the back of the Book of Lamentations, a book almost nobody reads, so it's understandable if you may have missed it. Okay, now I'm going to flash forward about 1,500 years to Talmudic times and talk about the famous debate between the rabbinic sages in Tractate Mishigas. The rabbis were debating whether it would have been better for a human never to be born at all rather than to go through all the travails of life, arguing that the time saved not having to floss might have made skipping life worth it. But the great Rabbi Akiva, famed for his profound interpretations of the oral law and his work as a bar mitzvah DJ, Rabbi Akiva ended all this foolishness and said, L'chaim, we should choose life. But then he added the gloss, but if we only had bialys, it would be a pretty close call. So now, let's move forward to the dawn of modern times. In 1492, it was bagel fanatic Christopher Columbus who convinced King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella to try out his theory that the world wasn't flat, as was commonly believed, but was round like a bagel with a big hole in the middle. He said, if you just avoid the hole, you can get to India in no time. Now, it's not clear whether the Spanish monarchs believed the idea was worth a try, or whether they were desperate to get Columbus as far away as possible. But anyway, they came up with the money. So Columbus set sail with his 3 ships, the Poppy, the Garlic, and the Pumpernickel. And as they say, the rest is history. And in 1626, Peter Minuit, a Dutch Walloon, Walloon is a Dutch word for Litvak. Anyway, Peter Minuit bought the island of Manhattan from the Lenape Indians, subject to a binding clause that the Dutch would open a Jewish deli on the Lower East Side. Incidentally, the Lenape are also known for their proverb, which in translation says, you can't get a decent bagel outside of New York City. Of course, the competition between bagels and bialys extends through most of American history too. Who can forget Abraham Lincoln saying during the bloody Civil War, you can eat only bialys some of the time, you can eat some bialys all of the time, but who would want to eat only bialys all of the time? Almost finally, I want to speak to one of the darkest episodes in bagel history, an anti-Semitic, anti-bagel forgery known as the Protocols of the Elders of Zabars, no doubt composed by a bitter paranoid proponent of bialys. According to this screed, a secret international cabal of bagel bakers was trying to convert the whole world to gastronomic Judaism, claimed the book. At a covert meeting, the bakers bragged that once they can't resist a bagel, can Schultz, Kugel, Kreplach, and Brisket be far behind? And the most insidious part was, after you rejected all the lies, there still remained a multigrain of truth. Okay, now I'd like to talk more personally about Eddie. Many people ask, what the hell was Eddie doing during the Korean War? Well, in fact, until now it's been a secret, but all these years later, I hope it's safe to divulge it. The truth is that even then, Ed was known for his vast collection of bad jokes. And in a bizarre plan, the CIA had Ed sit alone in a room and translate all of his jokes from English into Chinese, and then translate them back again into English. Even Ed had no idea where this was supposed to go. Now, it turns out that the biggest obstacle to the armistice talks in Panmunjom to end the war was that the North and South Koreans, the Americans and the Chinese, all didn't trust each other. And they all had very good reasons. And so it seemed totally impossible to move forward and even get to step 1 of any substantive negotiations. And the crucial moment that finally broke the ice was when the Chinese delegate boldly walked up to the American delegate and asked him, can I do it till I need glasses? Who knew? Of course, if any of you don't know the setup of that joke, well, it's still classified. And Ed, I hope you'll forgive me for letting out your secret heroic part in world history. So finally, I want to close with a wonderful proverb that somehow made its way to Ireland from Poland, where it originated. May the road rise up to meet you. May the wind always be at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. May your bagels always be fresh from the oven. Happy birthday.